I'm heading out into an extreme cold morning with a wind chill nearing -40 earlier this morning. For food, I've got just the bare minimum. Only 3 meals per day plus snacks. I have no shelter, unless you count a thin sheet of nylon, or my car being 500 meters away. I have only 3 Bic lighters to get a fire going in my titanium wood stove tonight. The burden of cringe thumbnail creation lies solely on my shoulders. And to arbitrarily raise the stakes, I only have 52 hours and 11 minutes to complete my mission. I am probably the greatest survivalist in the world. They call me Survivor Dude.
About to pass through the Narrows, and the wind is really kicking up here, biting. Time to bundle up.
As I approached a potential campsite, a near fatal mistake reminded me of my mortality. It was almost as dangerous as when Bear Grylls risked falling into a lava-filled crevasse.
I didn't know it was this fake. That comment was posted to an early expose of man vs.
But Survivor Dude is brave. Survivor Dude is strong. And it was time for me to put my bushcraft skills to use, and somehow turn this scrap of nylon into a home.
So I set up this tent once at home just to make sure it was going to work for me. It goes between 2 trees, and it's sort of like an A-frame with sidewalls. Let me show you. Yeah, this is actually quite an awkward tent setup. Took a bit, but looks pretty good. One of the main reasons I bought this tent, space to weight ratio. It is palatial in there. Look at that. I'm 6'3" and I could pretty much stand in here, just about. So that's pretty impressive. Obstacle course getting around these guy lines. Well, this is a pretty nice looking home. It's a great shelter once it's set up. There's so much room in there. The stove jack is absolutely puny around the pipe. That's silly. Aside from that, it's pretty cool. On to firewood prep now. This little guy here will be a good start. Perfect piece for me. Bone dry. Oh, it smells so good. Snow falling on the tent, making a beautiful pitter-patter, perfect white noise. Got my pots and kettle of snow. I didn't bring my auger on this trip. I want to get a more mobile setup, and I still haven't quite found it. Definitely a freeze-dried meal tonight. This is pretty sweet. Very, very comfortable setup in here. Also time for some tea. Let's get some fine splits for the morning when I wake up. Get the fire going quick. Pretty cozy in here. Oh.
Ah, sweet comfort. The masochist bane and the choice of sane folks round the globe. Years ago, Aaron and I did a grueling ice-out canoe trip that left us completely ravaged. Afterward, Aaron's mom, Barb, who's a lifelong adventurer, told us something. 3 words. Suffering is optional. Day 2. I awoke to a hostile environment, but managed to coax the copious birch bark and resinous softwood splits into a blaze, using the primitive lighters in my possession. That's when the blizzard hit. Snowmageddon, indeed. Cameras could never do it justice, so I mentally prepared to add an over-the-top snow filter to my thumbnail to illustrate my bravery, even though I'm inside the tent and that makes no fucking sense. But scrolling through feeds isn't about critical thinking. It's about pretty pictures and over-the-top ridiculousness. And so, I would proceed with the snow filter. What else is all this survival camping business for anyway, if not to fulfill a sweet title and thumbnail? Why even bother doing something if it's not clickable? For its intrinsic pleasures? Ha, don't be naive. The camping vlogosphere isn't about sharing your passions, it's about satisfying an audience's viewing expectations for pure algorithmic optimization. Moving on, I then tried desperately to clear the snow and avoid my shelter collapsing under the immense snowy burden. Hot fluids would be critical to maintaining my core temperature in these extremes. I choked down the sweet and milky Earl Grey tea out of pure necessity, and by stoking the stove, I took on the work of an entire household thermostat and furnace. As my state of despair deepened, I tapped into my training and prepared the emergency breakfast burritos. It was time for my greatest challenge to date.
I'm all set to head out. Today I want to go all the way down to the end of the lake and back, which would be 20 kilometers as the crow flies, so even longer on foot, and that is a huge day for me. Yesterday was a 4.5 kilometer haul, so it's gonna be a big one. Beautiful day out here. Still about minus 15, but some sunlight, and it's just dead quiet. Light flurries. This is awesome. What a gorgeous lake. I'm about 5 kilometers in, passing by the mouth of the northwestern bay, and I'm heading straight ahead to the western bay.
As I trudged onward, I reflected on how I was the greatest survivalist on Earth. With only several pounds of dried mango, cashews, chocolate almonds, and an ample supply of water to sustain me through the trek, rationing was the game, and my stomach roiled with the initial stages of acute pre-starvation. And having read many tales of polar exploration, I suspected scurvy was taking hold of me. My medical background from WebMD confirmed these fears. An epic life or death snowshoe. What a remarkable tale for my subscribers to tell their grandchildren someday.
Just coming around a small point here, and I'm going to call this the end of the road. I can see everything that I wanted to see, lay eyes on it, and shorten my day a bit. It's still going to be at least 15 kilometers round trip, and that is plenty. Wonderful view from here. The terrain is gorgeous.
What I had attained so far was a remarkable testament to human will, especially given the restraints of the expedition. Barely 9,000 calories per day, and a bare-bones shelter heated by a rudimentary metal box. I must self-impose all of these deprivations, else how would I attain the view counts that my self-esteem requires? A video with no views? No, that would be a true test of survival. As humble as I am on social media, I would still ask anyone who might see this to like, share, and subscribe, but I know without question that you have already done so. The blazing sun ravaged my corneas and porcelain skin as the grueling miles dragged on. I knew I would need to spend a small fortune on the anti-aging cream that the sponsored segment told me I would require to reverse the damage. But then, appearing like a street meat vendor after the bar, the entrance to my primitive shelter came into view. And I knew then that death would not have me this day. I fell to my knees, and I wept.
Back to camp at last. Just over 15 kilometers in total. And the hot tent is going to feel like a palace right now. Oh. It's good to have the fire going in here, get off my feet, and I'm happy with this shelter. When I was setting it up, I thought this is too fussy, I'm probably not going to use this, but it has enough redeeming qualities. Once it is set up, that I think it'll come into play, perhaps on a big trip coming up. One concern I had was that there seemed to be nowhere to hang clothes at the end of the day, but hung a line through the zipper. The tent is actually made to accommodate a gathered end hammock, and you can hang from tree to tree. For me, that's too complicated. I'd rather be on the ground if I have the stove going. But anyway, it's a great way to get a hanging line. Aside from that, yeah, there's just so much room. Way more comfortable than my teepee tent. And there's so much room I could even accommodate a couple of trees in here. Well, that was a perfect day to be out there on snowshoes, come back to a nice hot stove, and it's supposed to be a colder night tonight, but clear, so it's time to drift off into the stars.
What a sweet feeling it is to be so at home out here on a cold night in the bush. Mother Nature is hardly a hostile presence, but an ambivalent platform for life, if not a gracious host, providing for our every need. And so I remain unsold on the man vs. wild theme that we are constantly led to believe is the core of the human experience in nature. The idea that I need to kill everything that moves and be an aggressive macho man ready to wrestle a mastodon, illegally cut down a small woodland of live trees on public land for a stupid one-night shelter to get my prized thumbnail, and generally not sweat my impact on the land as long as I'm getting mine. The core of survivalism is longevity, and it requires an ongoing symbiosis with the land, not short-sighted gimmicks. But from Nielsen ratings to the box office to views on YouTube and the like, the man versus nature cliché remains the quintessential story of the wild. With our species becoming increasingly disconnected from nature, for some this warped view may be the only form of education they get on the great outdoors. If we don't reconnect our species with nature and eliminate the bravado of the man versus wild mentality, the game of survival that we play at may become all too real.
Minus 20 out here this morning. One of those nights that felt colder though. First night didn't feel bad at all. What a beauty out here. Well, that's another shelter test in the books. Did I find the perfect hot tent and the perfect winter shelter? No. It's always going to be some compromises. My canvas tent is still my favorite, hands down, for comfort, and it's like having a cabin in the woods is what it feels like. Now the question is, do I take this one on my bigger upcoming trip or my teepee tent? The teepee tent can be set up anywhere with the pole. I can set up on the ice if I want. So let's say it takes an extra 10 minutes to set up, max 20 I would say, versus the teepee. Then I have a way more comfortable shelter with comparable weight. So that makes it pretty hard to justify the teepee. But on this trip, I want to be on the move. So I think this will be it. There's always the option to cold camp, but I really can't imagine 10 or perhaps more days without a heat source to dry out. And no thank you. I'm not a survivalist. I'm a nature lover with wanderlust. And I need a little comfort out here. One other nice thing about this tent is you can set up one half and then lift up the other half like a baker tent, or you can just stake it out in an A-frame. So it's pretty modular too. Good design except for the puny stove jack. Can't speak to the quality. So far it's fine. About a mile out from the access point now, and this whole trip my mind's been racing. How do I perfect my setup so that I can be on the go almost every day and do more exploratory trips in winter? And what I've really got here is an identity crisis of who I want to be as a winter camper. I know I'm not a survivalist. Snow shelters, I've tried them, it's not really my thing. Car camping or snowmobiling in, also not really for me. And in the summer with the canoe, being able to get deep into the backcountry, see new lakes, explore, that is what drives me. But maybe winter, I'm not the same person in winter, or the conditions just don't allow me to be. Maybe I love the base camp, get in 5-10 kilometers, bust my hump getting in, and then just make a great setup, have my little cabin, bring the stuff that I've been thinking about leaving behind for a trip that allows me to travel, such as my wildlife lens, my ice fishing gear I would have to leave behind, and things as little as a beeswax candle. I've been thinking about what can I cut down to like the smallest detail. And maybe it's too much compromise and it's sucking the joy out of this, just so that I can spend 3 or 4 hours every day making and breaking camp and breaking trail with a heavy load alone. So I think what I got out of this trip is not a shelter that's going to allow me to do these exploratory trips, but just a confirmation of what I really want out of the trips. So that's pretty valuable. I'm feeling good, and however it goes, I'm really excited for this next trip.